What's up, guys? This is Chris from DraftDashboard.com. Here are my DFS picks for NBA
playoffs, Tuesday, May 25th.
These picks apply for DraftKings and FanDuel. Before I get started, please drop a like on this video and hit that red subscribe button and hit that bell icon so you don't miss our new videos. In this video, I'm going to go over my top picks for today's NBA slate. And if you stick around to the very end of this video, we'll use the Draft Dashboard tools to make a DFS lineup using the picks we just made.
Okay guys, we have a 3-game slate tonight, so let's take a look at the point guard position. I'm going to pay up for Luka Doncic from the Dallas Mavericks playing the LA Clippers, who have a good defense overall and they're middle of the pack defending opposing point guards. Luka Doncic has averaged 50.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 36% usage rate. He scored 66 fantasy points last game, played 40 minutes. He's projected at 53 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5.1 times value. He's $10,300 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 more on DraftKings. So I like this pick because Luka Doncic has scored 66, 74, 60, 48, and 60 fantasy points in his last 5 games versus the Clippers. So that's amazing player versus team history. Vegas thinks there's going to be 216 points scored in this game. So I like Luka Doncic here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, another point guard that I like is Dennis Schroeder from the LA Lakers playing the Phoenix Suns, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing point guards, but Dennis Schroeder has averaged 29.6 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 23% usage rate. He scored 25, 27, and 28 fantasy points in the last 3 games, playing 34, 30, and 28 minutes. He's projected at 28.5 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $5,700 FanDuel salary, and he's $100 less on DraftKings. So he scored 25, 26, and 30 fantasy points in his last 3 games versus the Suns. Vegas thinks there's going to be 208.5 points scored in this game, but I like that he's playing over 30 minutes, 34 minutes last game. He's got 30 plus fantasy point upside. His salary is pretty reasonable to let you fit in some of the other more expensive players. So I like Dennis Schroeder here versus the Phoenix Suns. Okay, let's take a look at the shooting guard position. I like Paul George from the LA Clippers playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing shooting guards. Paul George has averaged 40.5 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 30% usage rate. He scored 38 fantasy points last game, played 39 minutes. He's projected at 41.8 fantasy points here tonight. That's 5 times value. He's $8,400 FanDuel salary, and he's $400 less on DraftKings. So Vegas thinks there's going to be 216 points scored in this game. And Paul George has scored 38 and 46 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Mavericks. He's got 50 plus fantasy point upside. His salary is pretty low considering his upside. So I like Paul George here versus the Dallas Mavericks.
Before I continue with the picks, I'm excited today because we added a new contest for everyone watching. If you want to enter the drawing for $100 PayPal, all you need to do is like this video, hit that subscribe button, and make a quick comment below to be entered into the drawing. We'll reply to a random comment and let you know that you won, and then we'll send you $100 PayPal. So it's that easy, and we pick a new winner every Saturday and announce them in our video. So get your comment in now so I can add another entry for you.
Now guys, just as a quick note, we just released a free DFS contest on Draft Dashboard for MLB and NBA
for DraftKings and FanDuel. There's over $500 available in the prize pool, and this is a totally free contest you can enter as a Draft Dashboard member. So make sure to click the link in the description of this video, give Draft Dashboard a try, and you can start playing in our free DFS contest and compete to win some money.
Okay, another shooting guard that I like is Marcus Smart from the Boston Celtics playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing shooting guards, Marcus Smart has scored 29.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 33 minutes per game with a 19% usage rate. Now, he didn't have a great game one, only 25 fantasy points in 39 minutes, but I like that he played 39 minutes. Looked like he was going to go out with an injury, but he came back and he played the full game, so he's good to go. And he's projected at 31.3 fantasy points here tonight. And if he hits that, which is just a little bit over his season average, that's 5.9 times value. So a lot of upside, and he's only $5,300 FanDuel salary, and he is $500 more on DraftKings. So I love that FanDuel price. And Marcus Smart has scored 25, 31, 27, and 34 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Nets. Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game. So I like Marcus Smart here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, let's take a look at the small forward position. Now, if you're not going to play Paul George, especially on DraftKings, take a look at Kawhi Leonard from the LA Clippers playing the Dallas Mavericks, who have a good defense overall, and although they've been pretty good versus opposing small forwards, Kawhi Leonard has averaged 44.3 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 34 minutes per game with a 29% usage rate. But he scored 58 fantasy points, playing 40 minutes last game, so he's playing a ton of minutes, which gives him that 50 plus fantasy point upside. He's projected at 49 fantasy points here tonight, and even on FanDuel, that's 5.2 times value. He's $9,400 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. So Kawhi Leonard has scored 58, 43, 53, and 72 fantasy points in his last 4 games versus the Mavericks. So that's the reason I like this pick. On top of his salary being way too low on DraftKings, he has excellent player versus team history. So I like Kawhi Leonard here versus the Dallas Mavericks. And just real quick here, Kevin Durant also looks pretty cheap on DraftKings, although I think I would still prefer Kawhi Leonard over Kevin Durant, save about 1,000 DraftKings salary with similar upside. So although I do like Kevin Durant, I definitely like Kawhi Leonard a lot more on both sites. Okay, another small forward that I like, I'm going to give you a value play here. I like Dorian Finney-Smith from the Dallas Mavericks playing the LA Clippers, who have a good defense overall. They've been good versus opposing small forwards, but Dorian Finney-Smith has averaged 22 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 32 minutes per game with a 12% usage rate. He scored 28 fantasy points last game, played 36 minutes, and he's projected at 27 fantasy points here tonight. That's 6.1 times value. He's only $4,400 FanDuel salary, and he's $300 more on DraftKings. So he's playing a ton of minutes. His salary's low. We see that he's got that 25 to 30 fantasy point upside, which is enough to get you way over 5 times value. And Vegas thinks there's going to be 216 points scored in this game. So I like Dorian Finney-Smith as a value play here versus the LA Clippers.
Real quick guys, I got great news. For a limited time, we're offering a full 30-day trial to Draft Dashboard. You can try all of our DFS tools for all sports. You can try the Position Optimizer where you can see the top players ranked for each position. And we added a new Player Trends tool where you can see the top salary differences between FanDuel and DraftKings. It's a really good tool to help you pick out value for the site that you're playing on. Oh, and if you're tired of doing research every day, we just added a cheat sheet that shows hand-picked plays for the slate. No confusing stat lines, no headaches, just a simple cheat sheet that shows the absolute best players for your lineups.
Okay, who do we have at the power forward position? I'm going to give you a stud pick here. I like Jason Tatum from the Boston Celtics playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they're middle-of-the-pack defending opposing power forwards. Jason Tatum has averaged 44.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 36 minutes per game with a 31% usage rate. He scored 35 fantasy points last game, played 41 minutes, but he scored 73 fantasy points in 40 minutes the game before that. So he didn't have a great game last game. I think he bounces back in a big way. Now, he's projected at 48 fantasy points here tonight, but I think he can score 55 fantasy points or more and get you over 5 times value. He's 10,000 FanDuel salary, and he's 200 less on DraftKings. Now, he scored 35 and 51 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Nets. Vegas thinks this is going to be a high-scoring game. 227.5 points scored in this game. So I like Jason Tatum here versus the Brooklyn Nets. Okay, another power forward that I like, and this is a FanDuel play for me. I like Kristaps Porzingis from the Dallas Mavericks playing the LA Clippers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus power forwards, but Kristaps Porzingis has averaged 37.4 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with a 27% usage rate. Now, he only scored 22 fantasy points last game, but he did play 35 minutes, so he's getting plenty of minutes, and he's projected at 36.2 fantasy points here tonight, which is under his season average, and on FanDuel, that's 5.3 times value. He's only 6,900 FanDuel salary, and he is 900 more on DraftKings, so I love that FanDuel price. But I think he's got some pretty big upside on FanDuel, so I like Kristaps Porzingis here versus the LA Clippers. Okay, moving on to the center position. I like DeAndre Ayton from the Phoenix Suns playing the LA Lakers, who have a good defense overall, and they've been good versus opposing centers, but DeAndre Ayton has averaged 33.1 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 31 minutes per game with an 18% usage rate. He scored 42 fantasy points last game, played 36 minutes. He's projected at 38 fantasy points here tonight, and even on FanDuel, that's 5.3 times value. He's 7,200 FanDuel salary, and he's 1,100 less on DraftKings. So I love that DraftKings price. And I like this pick because he scored 42, 21, 42, 28, and 23 fantasy points in the last 5 games versus the Lakers. So I like that 40 plus fantasy point upside potential for such a low DraftKings price and even a reasonable FanDuel price. So I like DeAndre Ayton, especially on DraftKings here versus the LA Lakers. Okay, another center that I like, I'm going to give you a value play. If you're looking to save some money at the center position and get a guy that's got 50 plus fantasy point upside, take a look at Robert Williams from the Boston Celtics playing the Brooklyn Nets, who have a middle-of-the-pack defense overall, and they give up the 5th most fantasy points to opposing centers. Robert Williams has averaged 25.7 fantasy points per game on the season, playing an average of 19 minutes per game with a 15% usage rate. He scored 53 fantasy points last game. He played 22 minutes with an 18% usage rate. He's projected at 28 fantasy points here tonight. On FanDuel, that's only 4.8 times value because he's $5,800 FanDuel salary, but he's $1,200 less on DraftKings. And we know Vegas thinks there's going to be 227.5 points scored in this game, and he scored 53 and 34 fantasy points in his last 2 games versus the Nets. So you got some major upside at a low salary. So I like this as a tournament play. So I like Robert Williams on DraftKings here versus the Brooklyn Nets.
If you want to try all these daily fantasy tools for yourself, click the link in the description below this video or just go to draftdashboard.com. You can use our DFS lineup optimizer to build quality lineups using our picks and your own custom player pool. Click the link in the description below this video and try all these daily fantasy tools right now. Thanks so much for watching. Oh, and don't forget to subscribe to this channel and hit that bell icon so you can get instant updates whenever we post a new video. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. If you enjoyed this video, please smiggity smash that like button and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Oh, and please comment below with your favorite player for this NBA slate. I love to hear what you guys have to think. Thanks again, and good luck.